Hello, this is Don Jackson with Advanced Sports Massage Therapy and Muscle Performance. I would like to talk to you guys about what I see athletes dealing with, the life of an athlete. Well, for one, part of my story is I've dealt with multiple injuries, pushed the envelope for years, and I didn't understand recovery. I didn't understand performance. Being a massage therapist and just kind of learning as I went for myself, like what I was dealing with. And it was definitely a challenge, to learn about nutrition, to learn about performance, to push the envelope year after year, really day after day, year after year, and then see my body break down. Like I just was pushing so hard. I was in that David Goggins mindset of, push through your week and stuff like that, and I didn't want to be weak. I remember one day I definitely had a quad injury and something going on with my ankle, some ankle pain. Ended up running 10 miles that day, and I just destroyed that quad, and in my brain it was like I'm tough, I'm military tough, I'm Marine Corps tough, or just the mindset of just being tough and I can push through. And that just set in my head like I could keep pushing through, but it really was tearing me down. And I would say most athletes' biggest issue is not having awareness. Awareness of where their pain is, awareness of am I injured, am I hurt, like having that understanding. Now, part of it I would blame on, I can't even say you want to blame it, but it's just what it is. I mean, you got to blame some of it on the coaches. You got to blame some of the issues on therapists. You got to blame some of it on parents. I mean, and if you blame it all on the kid, I mean, it's a kid. Like, I mean, we're telling kids to push through. We're telling them suck it up. We're telling them you're not hurt, when they can really be dealing with some true traumatic issues and pain. And we're teaching them to endure trauma and push through trauma, which is actually just not healthy. So I would definitely say that the biggest issue I'm seeing with athletes is just not having awareness, and they're common places they don't have awareness at. And I would definitely start with the feet. The feet over anything. If you gave me a professional athlete, no matter what modality, no matter what sport, I would definitely start with their feet. And most of them don't have the awareness. They don't. They're not mindful of their foot placement. They're not mindful of their gait. They're not mindful of foot pain, or stretching their feet. I do see some track and field athletes dive a little bit into that, or athletes dive into it and running, long distance running, but that's because they've already had plantar fasciitis or some foot pain. So it's not that they're diving into it just because. And let's go back to why I say I blame all these people. I blame parents, coaches, therapists, because I put myself in the boat of blaming a therapist because I didn't invest enough time on the front end, which I would say would be the youth, and educating them on awareness. Hey, this is painful. Give me some feedback. Are you tight? Are you achy? Like educating them on the front end instead of having all this therapy when somebody's a pro athlete. That's the back end, So, or even the middle, So on that side, I would blame myself, in not investing enough time into them at the beginning, because it seems like they're not lucrative. It's not about being lucrative. It's about being effective as a therapist and really helping people. So you're gonna have to give a lot away, on the front end, no matter what. So that's something I wish I would have done more. Just more teaching, more giving away to the youth on the front end, and educating parents even, because the elite athlete is not going to become elite without a parent helping and guiding. on some aspect, like, and when you look at when you really look at the statistics of, I would say 20 years ago, where you're seeing elite athletes come from, they're coming from poverty. They're not coming from, wealth, and now you're seeing that, but it's because they're in the front. They're in the front because their dad was there and they have access, but they're not dogs. They're not monsters out there hungry, and that's unfortunate. But I remember a story with my dad. My dad was talking to me. My dad was one of the most elite basketball players I ever played against, and I remember him telling me, "Son, you're good, but you're not hungry." It messed with me because I thought I was super elite. I thought I was hungry. I had a nice vertical, had a nice shot. My ball handling ability wasn't superb, but outside of that, I was definitely solid. And I remember this guy. It was my freshman year, Washingtonville High School. The dude was like psychotic, man. I played basketball, and every time I played, he would come to hack my arm just as hard as he could. And at the time, I was getting in a lot of fights at that time. It was really weird, but a ton of fights because I came from basically a prep school to this this school. And what it did is, like every time he would hack me, I want to fight him, but I couldn't, and it made me tougher. It made me just fierce. Like this dude could hack me all day. I still was gonna put up 15, 20 points. I still was gonna win the game. I still was gonna hit the shot. So I get what my dad was saying then. It was like I wasn't him. I didn't come up in his era. I didn't come up with his desire. I didn't come up with his grind, and he couldn't put it into me. I had to endure it. I had to find it. I had to want that hunger. So I'm saying all that to say that, we're definitely dealing with a different generation, and in this generation, I think they're definitely by far more athletic. They're by far more intuitive, but on the flip side, I feel like they haven't invested enough in awareness, understanding themselves and their body. And something that I talk to a lot of athletes about is, when we're dealing with, their pain scale, like we're how they feel pain. They may feel pain at a different. They do. It may be pain for you. May be like a 3 or 4, or maybe you're feeling like a 6 or 7, but they may feel like a 2 and a 1, and that 2 and a 1 may actually register as I feel tight. But they're legit feeling a 3 and a 4, maybe a 5 at times, and they're pushing through. That's how they became elite. They could push through when others couldn't. So that's the separating factor between them and us, or average person. So being able to push through. So if they can get the awareness of, hey, I feel tight, I feel it's a 1, I feel it's a 2, but I don't need to stretch, because stretching is going to elongate that muscle and tear it sometimes if you have an injury, so it's just learning and getting the awareness, so I would definitely dive more into that with athletes versus, jumping the gun and giving too much therapy, and that's a big mistake I used to make in the past. Is I would give so much therapy to an athlete, and I wanted to wow them. Who doesn't? Versus you want to specialize and specifically hit areas that they need, so they're not having to stop, right, and rest the whole day, where they have to every day get something, make some progress. That's the mindset of an athlete. Every day where there's some progress, there's some growth, there's some development, there's recovery. All of that's part of it, but every day that grind continues, and you stop that grind and tell them, hey, you gotta take tomorrow off. And I used to do that, and I'm like, I wish I wouldn't have did that, because that actually hurt me, because I ended up not allowing them to make another step forward quicker, you know. So what I would say there in educating therapists now would be, you know, just kind of focus on one area, you know. So if they're complaining about their legs, just focus on their legs, you know. Don't overwhelm their upper body too, because now they can't work their upper body the next day. At least you give them something they could do the next day. Don't destroy them, you know. Like if they have a day off, you know, like try to schedule a very intense session around their next day off. But if that next day it's not off, why would you overload them? Because they have to do work. It's almost like someone had to go in and do a 15-hour shift. But before the 15-hour shift, you put in their body. You did the work, the trauma of a 15-hour shift. Now they are destroyed for this 15-hour shift coming up. So that's really the mindset of catering a session to an athlete and an individual. So I feel like we touched a lot of topics today. So, but number one, back to it, awareness. You gotta have the awareness, you know. So, my story about performance at the beginning, I feel like I was a little rabbit hole, but the reason I started talking about the performance for me in all of my injuries is to give you the perspective, to have the right perspective, that I have dealt with injuries and I understand them, but also on a level where most therapists are never going to understand. And I think that's what separates elite therapists from, you know, good therapists. You know, like you could be a great therapist, but an elite therapist has empathy. You know, they have compassion. So it's not, hey, I just want to give you a lot of therapy, or I just want to go real intense, or I just want to go. It's more the compassion side I see now as a therapist and maturity, where I'm not going to go as deep as I used to. You know, I'm not going to go and overwhelm an athlete when I don't need to. It doesn't mean it's not intense. It doesn't mean it's not deep, but it may not be as deep as it was 5 years ago, you know, and it's because I've learned, you know. And I think the more you learn, the more you grow, the more you develop, and you want to define your therapy. You know, you want to define it and understand this session is catered to this individual because of this format and this time structure. If you don't cater it properly, you end up hurting them again, because if the season's over and they only have, you know, a week to really dive in and do the work they need to do with you, well, you only got a week, you know, so you have to maximize that. So maybe it is a little bit more intense for that week, but that's all you got, you know, because maybe they're flying, they're going somewhere else or whatever. So on that aspect, you could work legs one day, the next day, or skip a day and work upper body, then do a session that's integrated and it's everything, then do another one, it's just feet, just hands, neck, you know, another one's just lymphatic, you know, another one, you know, it's more mobility, increasing range of motion, you know, another one is almost like a Rolfing session, another one is more just neurological, you know, like you can mix it up however you want to, but nevertheless it's not all of it at one time, you know. You don't have to do that, you know. So catering and structuring it, it's just like a business. It is their business, you know. As an athlete, their body's their business, so you're catering sessions to fit what that business owner needs for their body, you know. So that's essentially what you're doing. Can you scale it up, you know, to a team? Can you scale it up and make it more proficient and bring people on board with you? Yes, you can, but you have to be able to scale it. You have to have the structure of knowing this is for this individual, this is for this athlete, this is for the general public, this is what they can endure, this is they can't endure this, you know. I feel that's what's definitely helped me through the years, is understanding if I'm doing an expo, you're gonna get this level. If I'm working on a pro athlete, we're gonna get this level. If I'm dealing with somebody that's already had the most elite therapy and they let you know at the jump, we're probably going to go up here, you know, but I'm not going to just go from here to here just because somebody, it's a lot of therapy, you know. Now you're going to hurt, you could hurt somebody, they could actually get physically sick, you know. So there's just a lot of aspects to what we do, and what honestly is beneficial, you know. Like, so it's just what's beneficial to an athlete is not always, sound funny, it's not always what you perceive your best to be. It is what they need. It's like if someone's like, hey, I want you to give me your best meal, and your best meal is loaded with fat and all types of great stuff, all right, and you give them that, and they're like, well, I got GI issues, you know, so I can't eat that. Well, you just gave them something that they didn't need, you know. So it doesn't need to be what you perceive your best to be, but what they need, and what they need could be your best. It's not your perception, it's what they need. That's bringing me to another point, and it's actually being coachable as a therapist. And I feel as in every individual, we need to be coachable. What that means is they're teaching you when they come in. They're coming in, they're telling you what they need. Listen, ask questions, look at their body movement, assess them. If you don't give a good assessment, you might as well not work on a client. I think it's worthless to have a session with an individual and you're not assessing them to see where do they stand, how do they move, how are they integrated, do they twitch a lot? You know, something I was talking to an individual about, I think it was this week. We're talking about Ralphing, and why is that considered good, you know. And I told him that I was taught that Ralphing is more used to integrate and really reset an individual, right? So it's more, I would say, a deeper neurological mindset to Ralphing. But the example was if you had like a ballerina and they're set in movements that are very awkward, and then they retire, they're still doing those awkward movements. If you've ever been around a ballerina, they're just very awkward. They're just always fidgety and moving and stretching, and you know, kind of like a gymnast. They just can't stay still, right? So they would be definitely a great candidate for Ralphing, or a very neurologically rich session, you know, dealing with decompressing nerves or awareness. And so yeah, so I think that's good, you know, just to deal with those things and understand the individual, you know, and what they need. Like I said, and be coachable and understand, you know, where they're at, you know. So when I get a client like that that's very mobile or hypermobile, I'm still listening to what they're saying about their pain, their daily pain, or you know, like whenever it comes on. And if it's not even pain, they're just tight. And you know, just because you're tight doesn't mean that you need a lot of deep work. I've had individuals where they're tight, but they're actually spasming. So that's why they're tight, and they feel like they need a lot more deep pressure and a lot more massage and all, but they get a massage once a week. Now that's a red flag to me. When someone's getting that much therapy, I know most likely there's a nutritional issue. They're spasming. They're probably doing a lot of heat, and the heat is causing them to be way too loose at nighttime, and then their joints are inflamed even more because of the heat, and then they wake up extremely stiff. And this is something I learned because I was training for a full marathon, and I did not train properly. I think I went from like maybe 5 miles to, I don't even think I did went from 5 miles, but it probably was like 3 miles. But from from around 3 to 5 miles to 20 miles in probably a month and a half. And during that process, I would say a week out from that marathon, I ended up going to Hot Springs and getting a hot tub, you know, bath or whatever. And I came back, and I mean, it was hard to do 5 miles, and I built up to 20, and I was like, man, this is definitely this is definitely a factor. Me going to Hot Springs was definitely a factor in it. I didn't actually put it all together until after, but now I understand. Like my muscles got loose, but my joints definitely got irritated and more inflamed, and I was definitely stiffer, after. So that's just a lesson to learn. And like being coachable is letting them coach you, watching them, listening to them, caring, having empathy and compassion during the session, and then continue to listen and ask questions while you're working with the individual, because they may tell you about a situation or an accident that happened in the past, and that definitely can be a big change in your session. And something I would say to an individual, a therapist, that I think is profound is any relationship that's not defined will end. So define your relationship with the client, far as what your goals are for that client. Their goals may be very mediocre. Your goals may be extreme. Mine tend to be very extreme goals, because I wanna pass the bar for them. Like, unfortunately, a lot of individuals end up, if they've had therapy, it's physical therapy, and I definitely don't want to put anyone down. I think there's some amazing physical therapists in my region, but for the most part, their goal is to get you to a baseline, and if you weren't walking, now to get you walking. But do they care that you had a 40-inch vertical before you came in? No. Well, we don't care. They don't care about that. They just want to get you walking and doing the natural things that you need to be able to do to get you to where you were at before an injury or before an accident. Hey, that's going to be some additional work, and maybe they're not capable or understand that type of goal, but they're not set up for that. They're set up for a baseline. As a therapist, on my side, I'm set up to exceed expectations. I'm set up to go beyond. I'm set up to get a result, and if I don't consistently get a result, I just don't get paid. So that's the premise of advanced sports massage therapy and muscle performance, is to advance an individual to go beyond and to keep on going beyond, to learn and to be consistent. And I think that's kind of been my pursuit as an athlete, as a therapist, is to push the envelope. And I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but I ended up running at one point a couple years back, around COVID. Actually, it was COVID. 366 days, and that day, additional day, was a monster, But in the middle of that, I ended up running a half marathon, and I never built up the endurance for that, in my opinion. I just ran so much that what's a half marathon? Nothing, because I was running so much, So it just kind of showed me that you definitely are going to have adaptation with those types of loads and that type of push, And it definitely gave me a different framework of understanding athletes to perform every day. What does it mean? And that's why I say it's definitely different to get a therapist that understands the intricacies of your sport, or even maybe they don't understand your sport, but they understand performance, that you have to perform every day, and this is what it takes. And I think that's definitely something that's helped me. I'm not saying I'm the best therapist in the world or anything, but to push beyond the pack, or even try to separate myself from the pack, is trying to learn as much as I can. And there's a lot of techniques that I feel like I experimented on myself before I gave it to any client, and I still stand by that. I'm never going to give you a client something that I didn't experience on some level. And I've hurt myself a few times, and I've just completely scratched, certain techniques or certain tools, because I know a lot of y'all think I just love gadgets, but I think the most, if you've experienced a session with me, it's nothing going to surpass my hands. It's just, a gadget is a gadget. A tool is a tool. So my biggest thing with any tool is, if it's not efficient, don't use it. If it's most necessary for me to use my hands, I'm gonna use my hands. If it's most efficient for me to use a tool, I'm gonna use a tool. But I'm not gonna use a tool just because I'm being lazy, So, and not because I don't want to use my hands. So I would definitely say, if you're a therapist and you're kind of in that place where, hey, I just gotta use a tool,
Understand why you're using that tool.
and you're giving the clients the best quality, So my hands are by far more advanced, and there's just more tactile awareness in my hands than anything else, and the tool's just never going to give me that awareness. So definitely, as a therapist, be mindful to and to up your hands, use your hands more, and engage more, with your client, because like I said, if you're not defining that relationship, it's going to end. So define it, push them, educate them, and always give homework. If you don't give homework, it's pointless. What are you doing? Homework, giving clients homework is me saying that I expect you to do something when you leave. I don't expect you to do a ton, but I expect you to do something. And what great teacher is going to teach you something and not give you homework? It's not a great teacher, in my opinion. So the greatest teachers have always given homework and have always had an expectation for the individual to advance, to grow, to develop. So that's a lot. I'm gonna chop this thing up.